Idle Manager is not the typical game that I would pick up and normally play. And if you're watching this video, then that also might be your use case, as a simulation style game might not be your normal cup of tea. But if you're like me, when I saw the Nintendo Indie Presents earlier in 2021, Idle Manager really stuck out to me as being something that is very unique. And for some reason, it continued to stay inside of my mind as a game that I just had to pick up and play. Thankfully, I was provided a review code, of course all thoughts are my own, to play Idle Manager, and I was very excited. So recently, over the past few weeks here, I went on vacation, and I took Idle Manager with me, and I played it and created a idle group of my very own. So should you play it, and what is it? Let's talk about it. So Idle Manager is essentially a simulation game where you're building up a business managing idols from the ground up. You're going to be building this business by giving funds and money by a person that doesn't remain unnamed, but let's just say that they have built their own wealth in unsavory tactics. You're going to be given a lot of tools and skills and options and tutorials to build your own very own talent agency and idol pool. You're going to go from building up their public image to attracting fans and even represent the whole entire nation of Japan on the glorious world stage one day, as much other idol groups do nowadays in the K-pop and J-pop genres. The gameplay of Idle Manager can be summed up in this one sentence. You're going to be hiring idols via auditions that are going to be happening locally, regionally, and internationally. All of these idols are going to be randomly generated from their stats, their names, their appearances, what they do well, and how well you like them or do not like them. You're then going to be putting them to work almost instantaneously, to where you're going to be having them be on shows, internet shows, radio, television, game shows, all kinds of different campaigns, including magazine, ads, commercials. You're going to be having them create music singles, CDs, concerts, all kinds of different things that would come to be expected from idols as you're managing them, from managing a bunch of different contracts that will be coming set forth. With each of these things, you are going to have to pay money, and you will also receive money for doing all things, including things like paying rent and the employees that work for you. You're also going to need to ensure that you are managing your idols from a standpoint of needing to manage their physical and mental stamina, and making sure that they are in a healthy state and healthy mental state as well. This is going to require you to spend a lot of time with them, making sure that you hire the appropriate staff, which are going to be including coaches to train their singing, coaches to train their dancing, and of course, trainers to make sure that they are keeping task of their marketing, which includes their social media, to make sure that if any of your idols decide to date, that you have that well held onto, including if they happen to date you. Of course, with management comes money management, and money management can be the name of the game. You're going to find out quickly and ferociously that you can go through a lot of money while playing this game, but it is really fun to be able to manage all the money and the nuances that come with it when you're paying and being paid to do the various things that the idols do. Of course, early on, you're going to have a pretty steady flow of income as you're able to get income from your employer, as you're able to get income and loans from the bank. And as you begin to produce your first singles and shows and concerts, you're going to be able to get a pretty healthy amount of income. But as the various hours begin to stack up, as you go into the 8th, the 12th, the 14th hour, depending on how you begin to manage your time and your money, you can be in the red pretty quickly, as I found myself in the red pretty quickly over the past weekend. Now, to get out of this, the best thing you can do is ensure that you are putting your idols out there to work. Building up a fan base as soon as you can will net you the most income in the long run. So my personal tip is make sure that you focus on fans first, and secondarily focus on the concerts and the other extracurriculars after. Is this a foolproof method? Not exactly, but it's what I found success in. There also is a kind of a balance issue. At some point, I was in the red, so I decided to basically not pay my idols virtually anything, and I was not penalized for this whatsoever. The idols continued to work, they did complain, we managed them as such, and I was able to get out of debt pretty quickly. So I will say that if you decide not to pay them, I wouldn't worry too much, because they will continue to work because they're getting some renown from being marketed out there. Of course, along with managing the campaigns you're running, the ads you're doing, as well as the physical and mental well-being of your idols, this is going to include and encompass managing their stamina, including their mental stamina, where it will drop quite a bit, including their physical stamina. The good thing about this game is you can set things to happen pretty automatically. If you go in and choose your variety of staff, you can enable them to basically handle the idols for you. But at the end of the day, managing the stamina is going to be a thing that you have to keep in mind, but it's going to rarely drop very often. And if it does, it's going to be because the girls had a rocky relationship, not necessarily because you've been cracking the whip too hard in the studio. A few complications while playing on the Nintendo Switch that I noticed personally is just navigation overall. Navigation is going to be tied into the Pro Controller or Joy-Con or the face buttons if you're playing on the Nintendo Switch Lite, and it tries to emulate a mouse, and it is very incredibly un-user-friendly. I had one hell of a time playing Idol Manager in this mode because there's so many different nuances that you have to remember. If you want to do this action, you have to push ZR plus up. If you want to do this action, you have to push ZL plus up or down or left or right. You have to click in this button to do this, click that button to do that. You can use the D-pad to do X, Y, or Z, blah, blah, blah. It does explain these mechanics to you, but they begin to stack up so frequently that playing in handheld mode would have just really appreciated to be able to use the actual touchscreen that the Nintendo Switch has. This kind of broke up the experience for me, and I was really hoping that by playing handheld, I would just be able to navigate with my fingers as opposed to have to remember all the different complicated button presses that you needed to accompany with one another just to simply navigate down and choose to move a idol into my management office, go and flirt with them, choose a different campaign, check on my singles. The multitude of different simulation things that you have to manage at once can accumulate over time, and just having these clunky controls is not fantastic. One of the highlights of Idol Manager to me that really stood out was the story overall. Depending on what you do, the story is going to clock in somewhere around 15 to 20 hours, depending on how much time you spent with it. I personally clocked in just a little over 18 hours over my first playthrough, but depending on the different choices that you make, there are multiple endings that will allow you to have different experiences depending on which way you decide to go during the main story. Whether you decide to get closer to one character versus another, whether you decided to mentor one person or another, whether you decided to take on your mysterious rival in a certain way, all the choices you make will lead to different endings. So personally, I would say as you get better with it, as you manage your time better, the next equivalent gameplay sessions will be less, but that first one looked to be in and around 20 hours unless you are a amazing manager out the gate, which I will admit, as not being a sim aficionado, I definitely was not, and I stumbled all the way through to my 12th to 15th hour before everything just kind of started to be very easy for me. So should you buy the game? I would say that if you have a inkling of an interest in the sim genre, this is definitely a good first toe to dip into the water. I myself had a really good time playing this over the weekend and just chilling in bed, on the beach, in the hotel, at the park. Playing this idol management game was a really good fun time and a treat for me, and I really did enjoy building up the squishettes to take on the world stage, and I really did feel accomplished, and at the end of it, I really did have an affinity towards certain idols. What I will say is that there were so many idols that I was managing at one time that I did favor my second created group over my third or fourth or first one. So you are going to end up having an affinity to certain characters that you have, and you only have so much time to build relationships and flirt and actually maybe even date, etc., etc. So at the end of the day, you are going to have the ability to have an emotional attachment to some of these characters, but it's only on how much you allow yourself to have, because at the end of the day, if you're managing 50 idols, it can get very, very difficult to build any attachment when you're going through the rigmarole of just simply trying to manage a successful business, just as you would in real life. So I will say, should you get it? Well, at coming in at $24.99 on the Nintendo eShop, or $31.99 if you want to get the physical edition, which you can get from Play Asia. See the link in the description below. I will say it's a little pricey, but at the same time, this is one of the best sim management games I have ever played. Now, like I said at the beginning, I'm not a sim aficionado, but I have played games like Jurassic Park. I've played The Sims. I've played the park management games before, and I will say I had a much better time managing idols versus managing any of those parks or people in certain situations as I have before. If you have an inkling into K-pop or J-pop, if you kind of enjoy those musical genres or those style of music in any capacity, give this one a shot. It might be worth it. But at the end of the day, if you're on the fence by all those things, wait for a price drop. Overall, over here at the Game Lures, we're going to be giving Idol Manager a 7 out of 10. This was a good game and a good experience. There were definitely some flaws and some things I would have liked to have seen ironed out just by sake of quality of life. But at the end of the day, I had a good experience, and I would not want to get any of those 18 hours back. Thank you guys for watching my review of Idol Manager. Make sure to click on other videos on screen now and subscribe for more video games just like this. All right, we'll see you in the next one. Peace.